I've always been skeptical of ghost stories, but when I heard about Blackwood Forest, I couldn't resist. People said the forest whispered at night, calling out to anyone foolish enough to listen. Some even claimed those who followed the voices never returned. It sounded like nonsense, but as a journalist, I had to see for myself. I entered the forest at dusk, the fading sunlight casting long shadows between the trees. The air felt heavy, and an eerie silence blanketed the woods. I carried a flashlight and a recorder, determined to document everything. It started as a faint murmur, barely audible over the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. "Help me," a voice whispered. I froze, my heart pounding. The voice came again, soft but insistent, pulling me deeper into the woods. I told myself it was the wind or maybe an animal, but the whispers grew clearer, more human. "This way. Please," they said. Against my better judgment, I followed. The trees seemed to close in around me, their twisted branches forming grotesque shapes. My flashlight flickered, and I stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a stone altar, covered in strange, glowing symbols. The air was colder here, and the trees around the clearing looked wrong. Their bark twisted into faces, mouths open in silent screams. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of overlapping voices. I turned to leave, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were rooted to the ground. Panic set in as the whispers turned into shrieks. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, a gaunt man with hollow eyes and a sickly grin. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice layered with dozens of others. I screamed and bolted, but the forest shifted around me. Paths disappeared, replaced by endless trees. The whispers followed, growing louder until they were all I could hear. My flashlight died, plunging me into darkness. The last thing I saw were the faces on the trees turning toward me, their mouths moving in unison. "Stay with us," they chanted. And then, nothing. When I found the apartment, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. It was cheap, spacious, and close to work. The only odd thing was the room without a door. The landlord called it a storage space and said to ignore it. Inside, there was just a chair and a mirror, nothing else. At first, I barely noticed the room. But as days passed, I started feeling watched. At night, I'd hear faint noises, tapping, like fingers drumming on glass. It came from the mirror. One night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked into the room, the tapping louder now, like something was trying to get out. My reflection in the mirror looked back at me, but something was off. It wasn't copying me exactly. Its head tilted slightly. And its smile stretched wider than mine. "Let me out," it whispered. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. My reflection's hand pressed against the glass as if testing it. Then it started pounding, cracks forming in the mirror. I screamed and ran to grab something, anything, to stop it, but when I returned, the mirror was shattered, and the room was empty, or so I thought. A voice behind me said, "You had your chance." I turned and saw myself, or what looked like me. The doppelganger's eyes were darker, its grin twisted. It lunged at me, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was standing in the mirror, looking out at my apartment. The other me was living my life, smiling my smile. No one noticed the difference. I pounded on the glass, screamed for help, but no one could hear me. Now I sit in the room with no door, trapped behind the glass, watching a stranger live my life. And every night, I whisper the same words I once heard, "Let me out." I caught the last train home after a long day. The station was empty, and the train itself felt off. The lights flickered, and the seats were worn, but I didn't think much of it until I noticed something strange. At the first stop, pale figures boarded. Their faces were blurry, like an out-of-focus photograph. They didn't speak, just shuffled to their seats. I tried not to stare, but when one sat across from me, I realized its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was overtired. But with every stop, more of them boarded, filling the train with an unnatural silence. The conductor appeared, his face shadowed under his cap. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. "This train isn't for the living," he replied. He handed me a ticket. My name was on it, along with tomorrow's date. Panic set in. There must be a mistake. "I'm not, you will be," he interrupted. The train screeched to a halt, and I was shoved out onto a platform that didn't look like any station I knew. The conductor tipped his hat. "Prepare yourself." I woke up in my bed, heart racing. It felt like a nightmare, but the ticket was on my nightstand. That evening, as I crossed the street, I heard the sound of a train whistle. The headlights came out of nowhere. Now I understand. The midnight train doesn't make mistakes. Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And hey, share it with your friends, it really helps the channel grow. Thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.